Welcome to Bear Cave. We are here with Steve from CFC Bears, and we are going to be talking about 2025 draft prospects for the Chicago Bears, who currently hold the number 9th pick and have two other picks in the top 50, almost the top 40. So, right now, Steve, do you want to kind of give an intro just to kind of like what you do in terms of like writing about these draft prospects, and then we can kind of move position group by position group through the potential prospects for the Bears?
Yeah, so I'm part of Building the Board is what we call it. It's through OnTap Sportsnet. Bucket Stats on Twitter kind of started it, Quinton. So I do that with him and a couple other guys. I obviously post a lot of the video on CFC. We're really going to be kicking it out after like the first of the year, getting those scouting reports out. Right now, we're just doing videos and stuff. But yeah, it's an exciting time. Thanks for having me. I obviously love talking draft. So really excited to kind of like dive into some of these guys.
Of course. So let's move into the O-line class. We know that has been a talking point, a very loud talking point regarding the Bears O-line situation. So first, let's kind of move in to, I guess, I don't want to say consensus number one O lineman in the class, but a guy that everyone is talking about, Will Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
What is kind of your, I guess, synopsis on him? I've heard that he might be playing guard at the next level. Why is
Yeah.
that? And is he the top O lineman in the class?
Well, I'll start with the easy one. I believe he is the top O lineman in the class. It's a really, I don't want to say weak offensive line class because there are guys that I like. I think it lacks the top end talent. Like there's not a Joe Alt in this draft class. There's not even a JC Latham, who I really like last year. Like I don't think there's one of those like a prospect like him in this draft class. So I think Will Campbell is the offensive lineman one. Terms of where he's going to play, I think that's going to be a discussion that we're going to be having constantly this offseason. I don't think it's going to be settled like up until draft day. And if you ask one team, they'll say left tackle, and if you ask another, they'll say guard. I've even heard that from like Dane Brugler that some people want to see him at center. So it's going to be a big debate. But like he's a really good prospect. I know I said there's not a Joe Alt in this class, but that's Joe Alt is also a kind of a freak of nature. Will Campbell's a really good prospect. Don't get me wrong. Really light on his feet. He's really just a technician with his hands. He very accurate punches, uses his hands independently, fluid hips, can anchor versus pass rush. The reason, and maybe I should get back into it, the reason people are talking about moving him inside is because his arm length. He doesn't have 34-inch arms. He probably doesn't have 33-inch arms. We're probably looking at like 32 3/4. And there are some guys who have succeeded with that length at left tackle in the NFL, but the list is very, very short. If you ask me right now, and I could definitely change this, I'm putting him at left guard. I think that's where he's going to be best. Like I said, his hands are his best. His hands are his best attribute, and that really actually can be amplified inside. And the way with his grip strength, when he gets his hands on you, it's pretty much over. And I think he just does better in a phone booth more than he does in space. Even though he has really good feet and hits his landmarks, it just seems like he's always, I don't want to say struggling. It always just seems like it's a real fight when he wins. Like it's not a lot of super clean reps, you know? Okay. So I think if you just put him inside, put him in a phone booth, he's going to be really, really good. The question is, do you draft that at 9?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Especially if you're planning on moving him interior, right? I mean, right. The Titans, they move Skronsky to guard, right?
Yep. It's very similar prospect. Like, yeah. If you're doing comparisons, that's actually have that on my notes. That's exactly kind of what the situation is. He was drafted 11th. He hasn't been that great. I'm not gonna be honest. I haven't watched a lot of Titans all 22, but from what I've heard, he hasn't been like that fantastic. So if you're gonna draft a guard, I have no problem drafting a guard top 15. But if you do, they better be a Quentin Nelson who comes in right away and is dominant and everything like that. And I don't know. I think Will Campbell can be that. I think he can do that for you. So for the Bears, I think he ends up going top 5 because I think there will be a team that I think there will be a team that likes him at left tackle. And if you think he can play left tackle in the NFL, then he's a top 5 player. The reason he would drop a little bit is if you're not sure if he can play left tackle. So all it takes is one team to say, okay, we can make this work at left tackle, and then he's a top 5 player.
Dobbs, what is your kind of opinion on Campbell? Because Dobbs is LSU fan, so
Okay.
he's watched a lot of LSU and the Brian Kelly circus. What do you think?
Yeah, the Brian Kelly circus. No, jokes aside, look, I love Will Campbell. He look number one. He wears the illustrious number 7. He can't wear on his jersey, so he has the illustrious patch instead. I think we're talking traits. That's the number one thing I think everyone needs to know about Will Campbell is that he's the leader of one of the leaders. He's going to come somewhere and be a leader long term. And to your point, Steve, about the Skronsky thing and the Quentin Nelson thing, it's actually one of the things I have in my notes too. I think the big difference about Will Campbell is though, because I'm going to be honest with you guys right now, and to your point, Steve, I do think some teams it'll vary. I do think it'll be more like 1/4 to 3/4 though, where 1/4 of teams will say maybe we can make it work on the outside. But I think a lot more teams will see how you can use him much more. To your point, he's a puncher. He's really good at the point of contact. He's a humongous frame, and I think I would prefer him. Right, the more that I can get him on sweeps and pulls and stuff like that too, where you're not going to have much of that at tackle. I think you're going to maximize him and his strengths at guard. And I have heard the stuff about the center too, but I would say either left or right guard for sure, right? And my thing, I think that I would say back to the whole Skronsky and Nelson thing. Why I think personally you're getting much more of a Nelson upside, and this is not a knock on Skronsky, it's just honest truth, is that Skronsky was never going up. I can't say never, but he was really rarely going up against SEC level talent guys. Really dominant. 5-star guys off the edge, 4-star guys at a super consistent clip. Meanwhile, Will Campbell, you saw it off the edge and you're saying, okay, he's still handling it even at what might very well not be his natural position in the NFL. If we get him more right where we think he could be natural long-term, which to me, I do think is guard, I think we're looking at, to your point, you're looking at a Quentin Nelson upside out of him, which is why I do think that, look, if he was to fall to the Bears, as of right now, again, it's all subject to change. Like you said, Steve, we're still very early in the draft process. I still got a lot of tape I'm gonna have to watch. And before my opinions, because Hunter knows, sometimes you start really, really high on someone, and then someone comes and takes, you're kind of like, wait, we're gonna pivot a little bit because as much as I liked him, I see some of that of these other guys I like more. But as of right now, especially considering that I watched him every weekend, look, Will Campbell is, in my opinion, the best guard right now in the draft, and I would say he's worthy of a top 10, top 15 selection.
Before we kind of move on to our next prospect, I want to talk about another prospect, like the other tackle at LSU, Emory Jones. Like from what I was seeing at the beginning of the year, he was supposed to be they were supposed to be the best tackle duo in college football. What kind of happened with him?
With Emory Jones, I think he's always just been a raw prospect. So he has all the athleticism, he has the length. He just has never really been able to put together technique-wise. And I've watched much more Will Campbell than I've watched Emory Jones. So Dobbs, as an LSU fan, you actually might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just feel like he never took the next step in terms of technique. That being said, the athletic traits and the length are crazy. So he's a guy who if you get him in round 2, I feel like there's good value there because the upside is tremendous. So, but yeah, like I said, I still need to do a deep dive on him. But curious what Dobbs thinks as an LSU fan.
No, I think you're right on the money there, Steve. Again, second, even early third, I think you're going to get maximum value the longer you can wait. But to that point, look, you get him around the right O-line coach, and the sky is still the limit, right? I think to answer the main question, though, what happened, just lack of consistency. It's not like he didn't have really good weeks here or there, but it was just never that super consistent, dominant, right guy you want on the right side, right, to also maximize Will Campbell on the left. So, and you were right, Hunter, they were supposed to be the dynamic duo. It just never turned out that way. And look, and to the point though too, and from the LSU guy, there was weeks too where Will Campbell, that you'd still would say you're kind of like, okay, it wasn't the best week, and that's kind of the whole point of why, again, I think most that Will Campbell will be maximized as a guard because, like Steve was saying, there would just be some matchups that Will Campbell would have where you would see his weaknesses playing tackle because of certain inherent disadvantages he has with that arm length.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Jones. I think Jones is a guy that's going to go earlier than what people think because you get to the drafts, you get to the offseason, you get to the combine. He's going to blow up the combine. He's going to blow up the measurables and that stuff. And those guys get overdrafted, and it's probably to a detriment to a guy like Emory Jones. because he's going to have these like high expectations as maybe a high second round pick, maybe even late first if the traits really are that crazy. And then you have really high expectations for him and he's just not ready to like start right away. So I kind of hope he does go into that like third round range and like takes a year or two to develop, because I think the sky's the limit. You know, you could potentially have a top 10 tackle when it's all said and done.
Okay.
I would definitely agree with that.
Let's move in to our next O-line prospect. We have Kelvin Banks Jr., the tackle from Texas. So I've seen some up and down things about him. I've seen that he's been on the ground quite a bit. Is that true?
Yeah. How much time you got with this is going to be a player that I'm going to be much lower on than the consensus. Like he's getting top 10. Well, he was at least getting top 10 hype. I think it's calmed down a little bit, but man, that tape for a top 10 prospect is pretty rough. Like you said, he's on the ground just a ton. He's just like always on his toes. So he's always leaning forward and bending at the waist. And guys at the college level are taking advantage of it. And that's not going to get any easier at the NFL level, obviously. Yeah. He does some good things. Like I don't want to just knock him, but he's started since he's a true freshman. He's still very young, so the sky, like kind of like Jones, the sky is like the limit. And he's a good athlete. I don't know if he's a great athlete, so that's another reason why I'm kind of a little bit lower on him. Because if he was a great athlete that maybe had some technique issues, you could be like, okay, like I could see the top 15 upside. You know, as long as you're patient and you get a good O-line coach, like there's stuff to work with there. But I think, like I said, I think he's a good athlete, not a game-changing athlete. Right. So it's like the margin for error there is low, but I think he's a good run blocker when he's on the move, more so than when he's in the box, which is weird because I actually like him better at guard as well. He's another guy I kind of think could possibly move inside guard, but I think that balance issue might actually be more pronounced inside if he's
getting blown up by bigger guy.
Exactly. So it's a tough eval. It's a very tough eval. It's a very tough eval. And if the Bears drafted him at 9 or even top 10, like I'd be upset. But then again, the thing about scouting, guys, is you're always wrong. It happens all the time. You're wrong probably more often than you're right. So I could be very, very wrong on Kelvin Banks. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But man, it'd just be tough, especially. There are other offensive line like Josh Connerly from Oregon, the tackle from Oregon. I love him. Like I would put him over Banks pretty easily.
Oh, wow.
Josh Simmons from OSU, another guy I think I probably would have over Banks. Ariante Ursary, I think over Banks. Like Kelvin Banks is going to struggle to be a top 5 guard for me, I think.
Oh wow, okay.
With the caveat that he still has, at Texas, he still has a few games left, so he could sway that projection, but I don't love what I see so far.
Okay. The next prospect I want to talk about is Gray Zabel. He's the North Dakota State. I think he's listed as a tackle, but I saw a lot of projections to guard for him. Seems kind of like a theme here is like, if people don't know if they're true tackles in the NFL, which is a little concerning, but we've seen some guards from smaller schools. I know Mason McCormick on the Steelers. He's been playing pretty well. So what makes Gray Zabel worth like a day 2 pick if he makes it there?
Yeah, I think day 2's right for him. And North Dakota State themselves like always is churning out offensive linemen. It seems like Cordell Volson, Cody Mock. Like there's a couple other guys too. Like North Dakota State's a good program. They might be FCS school, but they crank out good offensive linemen. They crank out good prospects. But I like him a lot. I think he's the reason you're interested in him is because of the athleticism. He's really quick on his feet, athletic, hits his landmarks. Like you said, he's listed as a tackle. He plays left tackle for North Dakota State. He's not going to play left tackle in the NFL. He's a similar problems to what Will Campbell has, the shorter arms. He probably struggles a little bit more against power than Campbell does. So he's a guy that I think a move to center makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Because he struggles a little bit more with power. I think a move to guard that's not going to help that if you move inside to guard. But if he moves to center, I like him a lot. You can get him in, if you run an offense that likes to get your center out on the move. I think he'd be perfect for that. But his hand work is really advanced for a guy who's playing at a smaller school. Like he's not just a guy who's only winning with athleticism. He has pretty good technique as well. So I would really like. I think he's very much in play for the Bears with one of their 2 second-round picks, but I think that would be a little bit early.
Okay.
I think if you can get him with a trade down, or if you can get him in the 3rd, I think that makes a lot of sense because I think he can play multiple positions. Like I said, I think center makes sense, but again, I think he can play guard. So I think he has more. It's that flexibility. Maybe you can even play him at tackle to pinch if Braxton Jones gets hurt. I forgot to bring this up with Will Campbell, but it's another reason I like these kind of guys for the Bears specifically who can have that versatility, because it's going to be difficult to find a better. I know people, don't like Braxton Jones right now, and he's definitely like the Bears could definitely upgrade over Braxton Jones, but I think it's going to be harder to find an upgrade than people think. Just because he has a floor at least.
He's serviceable.
He's serviceable at least. So yes, they can upgrade, but it's going to be harder to find one than you think. But if you draft a guy like Will Campbell or Gray Zabel or even Kelvin Banks, who maybe has some flexibility, you can start them off at guard. And then if Braxton Jones is really not doing it for you, you can kick them out and see like, okay, let's play them at tackle. We got because Braxton, we can't do Braxton Jones anymore. Let's play them at tackle. So you have that flexibility. So that's another reason why I like Zabel, even though I don't think that's his best position in the NFL.
Okay, I got you. Now, I know this center class has been like regarded as a little bit weaker, and like someone that I know I liked, and we messaged briefly about yesterday. Logan Jones is going back to Iowa for a year, so I added Jonah Monheim, and he's at USC. I believe he played a year with Caleb. Was a year or two?
2 years. Played 2 years with Caleb. Yep.
So what do you think who is the best true center in the class to you, and what round do you think Jonah could go in?
So the best true center in the class, in my opinion, is Jared Wilson from Georgia. He's a redshirt sophomore, so he could also go back. But I did my center rank. I did a very early center rankings, and Monheim was number 2 for me.
Okay.
So I really like Monheim. I think it is a down center class, as you said. So if we're talking about where these centers are going to go, I think 3rd round would be the earliest I'd feel comfortable drafting any of these centers. Regardless of who their top center is, and everyone's rankings are going to be a little bit different. Every team's rankings is going to be a little bit different. So in the 3rd round, I'd be comfortable drafting Jared Wilson or Jonah Monheim. Everyone else, and maybe even Parker Brailsford from Alabama, although he's also a redshirt sophomore. So those 3 guys, I think, are the top guys. In terms of Monheim, so he's interesting because he's played all over USC's offensive line. He was a right tackle, I believe, and right guard. Like when Caleb was first at USC, he actually played left tackle last year, but he was always a guy who. And he had like pretty good tape at tackle. Like he had great PFF grades. I think he had PFF grades, like pass block grades over like an 88 or something like that. So he was a guy who probably could have continued to play left tackle for USC and then make a transition to the as he goes to pros, maybe to inside. But he decided to move to center as a senior here. I think a redshirt senior, which I think was a really good decision for him because he got that transition kind of out of the way. He's going to be able to come into the NFL and play faster because he made that transition in college. And I wish more prospects would do that. But I really like Monheim. As I said, he was my 2nd ranked center. It's funny because when I watched his first couple of games this year at USC, and man, I didn't like he was getting. It was not very good. He played against Michigan. Those 2 Michigan defensive tackles who were both studs were eating his lunch. So maybe that's not his fault, but his tape as the season has gone on has been really improved. He's really good with his hands. He's really athletic. He's another guy that they get out in space and get on poles. I really like him a lot. I think a 3rd round pick for him would be really nice. And again, another guy who's versatile. So if you have a free agent center, maybe you sign like Ryan Kelly and you have him, you could draft Monheim, play him at guard, and then he's your center of the future. Or you can play him at center if you sign a guard. Like he's got that flexibility. I really like him. I think he's going to get drafted higher because of that flexibility. I think teams are going to like that.
Okay. Our last, I would be interested. I would like them to sign a center and then draft a center as well.
Yeah, I think they have to.
Our last O lineman, we have Jonah Savanaia from Arizona.
Yeah.
I saw as the year went on, I know like the tackle class was kind of up in the air. He was kind of regarded as one of the maybe top guys. Now he might be like a second round pick, end of the first, and he could be also a guard. So what's the deal with him?
Yeah, I love 7A. I'm going to be higher on him than most. I have him easily a first round pick. Probably, I don't have my rankings yet, but probably pushing for a top 25 player at least, maybe top 20.
Okay.
He plays right tackle now. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, he plays this year. He's played right tackle and left tackle, and he's played right guard in the past. He's to me, I've watched his right tackle tape earlier this year, and I loved it. You can see kind of the videos here. There's the way he uses his hands independently. The punch, has some force back on it, and when he gets his hand on you, like the rep's over. You can see also on some of these reps that his hips are a little bit stiff, so that's why people kind of want to move him inside the guard. I think he can play right tackle in the NFL. I think his best position is probably going to be end up at guard, but I think he has a better chance to stay at tackle than some other guys.
Okay.
But again, I really like him, and I'm just watching his tape, and it's just so good. And he also did his heavy hands, this snatch technique you'll see in these videos come up are just so fun to watch. But yeah, the stiffness of his hips, tendency to overset a little bit. He's not a dominant run blocker, despite like how big he is. He's like 6'5", 330 pounds, but he's actually better when he's on the move. The other thing I'll say, I mentioned he played left tackle this year. He looks so much better on the right side.
Okay.
Like it's noticeable, his tape on the right side versus on the left. So it's not like a guy you could be like, okay, let's draft him and he can replace Braxton Jones. I don't think so. So if the Bears did draft him, you're obviously not going to move Darnell Wright. So I think you put him at right guard.
Oh, that would be a nasty right side. That would be really
that'd be so
interesting
good.
to see. Really
Those two guys. It's actually funny because my comparison for Jonah Savaiinaea is Darnell Wright.
Okay.
Because a lot of people thought Darnell Wright was going to have to move inside. And obviously he's proved he can play a tackle. And
Yeah.
Jonas is the same way. I think he can play tackle, but he might have to move inside. And just the Bears are just in a position where they don't need a right tackle, but they really need a right guard. So it makes a lot of sense.
Does he kind of have that nastiness of Darnell Wright, or is he a little bit more reserved?
In spurts, he does. I would like to see him be a little bit more dominant in that way. Like I said, he wins more, and with run blocking, it's more with athleticism more than anything. He has the ability to move people out of holes and the rotational strength to do so. It just doesn't happen as much as he wants to happen for a guy his size. But I think it's there. He just got to get maybe a good coach to kind of bring it out of him.
Before we move on to our next position group, is there anybody that you just want to quickly mention in the O-line position group to look out for? Also, all these videos that you're seeing are made by Steve, and they're on at CFC Bears, his Twitter. So thank you for letting us use them, and they're
of course
very good, very good. So any other players?
Yeah, I just think I think Marcus Mbao from Purdue. He plays right tackle. He's also played right guard. I think he's a guy who's being slept on. I think he's really athletic, got good hands. I mentioned Josh Connerly. I'm a big fan of his. Josh Simmons too. I really like them if you're gonna go with a left tackle, those are the kind of guys you want. And then I've kind of mentioned the centers. I'm just trying to think. And I think that's off the top of my head. That's what I got.
Okay, let's move in to the defensive line group. Let's start out with Nick Scourton. Dobbs, this was your pick. So why did you put Nick Scourton on here?
Well, okay, right off the bat, I think what I like, and maybe not a lot of people talk about him like this, but I'll talk about him like this. I think that I can see some versatility with him, right? Because of, I'll say this. He doesn't have necessarily maybe the length that you'd love for saying that he's versatile, but he's got the body size where you're saying for sure, and he's got a really good bag of tools, right? And to go to my notes, look, more than anything, I'll say good speed and twitch for his size, right? Like I said, good arsenal of tools to attack the quarterback. I think, if anything, I love his long arm, and I think that's one of my favorite things about him is that I think he maybe is even better in the run game right now than he is as a pass rusher, but we still have a lot of tools to develop him as a pass rusher long term, and really, really good bull rusher. He collapses the pocket really often, and yeah, kind of like I said, he's got a good bag, but I do still think that there's a lot of refinement to be done. But again, for a guy that's young, for a guy that I see the versatility in, I do think that there's a lot of upside there if the Bears were to go that route for their first round pick. Now, what do you think about him, Steve?
Yeah, I kind of agree with everything you said. I do like the versatility. It's weird because we don't know what defensive scheme the Bears are going to be running.
That's another thing. That's what's tough.
Like in the past, you're like, okay, we know Eberflus likes big, long defensive ends who are good against the run. And it's like, okay, Nick Scourton fits that perfectly. But we don't know what defensive scheme. We don't know who knows if the GM is going to be different. We know the coaching staff is going to be different. So but I think that he does have that versatility kind of playing any scheme. But yeah, I was actually watching more of him last night because he had him on your list. I was like, I need to watch more of him. So this is all just fresh in my mind. I liked him because I think he does have better athleticism than for his size, like you said, like 6'5", 285 pounds. Like he moves pretty well for a guy who's that size. I don't think he moves great overall though. Like he doesn't need to be 285. I kind of wish he was 265 and a little bit more twitchy, or he was 300 pounds and moved inside. Like he's kind of a bit of a tweener.
I would agree with that. I would definitely.
Would you equate him to kind of like more of like a Darius Robinson, where he's kind of all over the line?
Yeah, I think Darius Robinson had actually a little bit more juice than Scourton does. But yeah, I think they have similar body types and probably a similar profile in the NFL. I wish my biggest concern with him, or biggest issue with him, is that he does have a really good like bull rush, but he just doesn't use it as much as he should. He tries to be too much of a finesse rusher. He's doing spin moves, he's doing cross chops, and his spin move is actually really good. But his game is kind of built off finesse, and then he throws in power every once in a while and wins with power. And I wish it was reversed. I wish he would start with power and work off of that and then surprise people with a spin move. I think he's just too finesse for his body type. Like he's trying to play like a speed rusher, and that's not his game. So I think he has all the athletic traits. He has the length and everything like that. I think really good defensive line coach can turn this guy into a monster. I just don't know. He's not there yet, but a good D-line coach could really mold him and get him to be where he needs to be.
Well, and to your point there, Steve, what I wanted to say is, look, I'm with you on what, and I kind of just didn't say it, but I'm glad you said it because it's reminded me. That's kind of my thing too when I watch him. Where I'm like, you're spot on with the tweener thing. I do think also whatever team drafts him, they got to decide almost. Do we want to bulk him up a little more, right, and have him just in that power specialist role, like you're saying, or are we going to take 15, 10 off and try to see if we can really maximize his entire package of tools? Because I do think you kind of got to pick your poison as far as that's concerned, because you don't want to spend that high of a pick on someone and not really have them have a full identity. You want to have a really, really specific role for them when you're drafting them this high, where that they're going to come in and have a really immediate impact for as high as he would potentially go here.
For sure.
One of my favorite prospects that I would be ecstatic if the Bears took, I want to hear your opinion on Abdul Carter from Penn State. I mean, would you rate him as probably the top edge in the class?
For me, it's easy. He is the top edge of the class. I don't think there's another guy that's really that close. The only thing that's keeping him from top defensive player of the class is, I don't know, it depends on what you feel about Travis Hunter. But if you have Travis Hunter as a wide receiver, he's the top defensive player in the class, I think. He's so good. And he's only getting better. I had reservations about him early in the year because he's transitioning from an off-ball linebacker to an edge. And early in the year, he looked like that. He was just winning with athleticism, and that was pretty much it. And even he wasn't winning as much as you'd want him to. But his tape as the year has gone on has already shown growth as a pass rusher. And that is probably the most important thing. It's like, okay, if this guy can do this, make that leap from week 1 to week, whatever 12 we're in right now, whatever it is, imagine what he can do in an NFL weight room with NFL coaching and just over the course of his career. I think this guy is going to be one of the best pass rushers in football in 3 years, and can contribute right away as a rookie as well. So to me, I mean, it's a pipe dream for him to be on the Bears next year, but man, it would be so cool. But who knows? Maybe the Bears will lose out and have a top 3 pick.
That would be nice. I mean, do you think he gets out of the top 5, or do you think he's top 5 lock? No, top 5 lock.
I think top 3 lock. I think it'll go Travis Hunter, Carter, and then probably Mason Graham.
So,
my guess or something like that.
Do you think there's any chance if Las Vegas and the Giants get the top 2 picks that they go quarterback, and then I guess that would still be top 5 then? Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I should say, maybe you're right. I always forget about the quarterbacks. Top 5 lock, because there will be 2 quarterbacks who go in there stupidly, but it'll happen. Shedeur Sanders seems like a lock for the Raiders, so he'll go in there, and then Abdul Carter will go 5th overall and everyone will be talking about how the hell did they let him fall to number 5.
At least we don't have to talk about quarterbacks this year.
What?
So good.
What I was going to say, though, before we move on from Abdul Carter, it's just a nice little point. It's important to remember what happened to the last off-ball linebacker They saw the traits and then they put him at off the edge in Micah Parsons, right? We see what Penn State can do with these guys.
Wearing
So
number
there'd be no
11 too.
Yeah, so
Number
no.
11, yeah.
To all of Steve's points, like there's no reason Abdul Carter shouldn't go. I agree. I think Abdul Carter's top 5 talent out of this year's class. He is going to be a menace, kind of in any scheme he falls into. So,
yeah.
The last 2 D linemen I have, this one is definitely the top interior rusher or interior lineman, Mason Graham from Michigan. If you had your choice, would you rather have Mason Graham or Abdul Carter?
I'd probably go Carter, I think, but Mason Graham is such a hell of a player. It's kind of like pick your preference. Like if you want the guy who could be the best edge rusher in football, you go with Carter. If you want a guy who's going to be a top 10 defensive tackle in football, but maybe not number 1, you go with Mason Graham. Like the guy is just so good. It's hard to find holes in his game. Maybe he struggles a little bit against double teams, but it's not something that's egregious you see all the time. It's just, but I mean, if you just look at these moves, the lateral agility at his size and the power he has in his hands, the way he can control the point of attack in the run game or just beat you with quickness in the pass game like you're seeing here, he kind of does it all. I think even though he's been really good in college, I think he has even more pass rush potential than what he's shown. He needs to finish a little bit more. Some of these, pressures aren't turning into sacks. But I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he's kind of the dream for me, like realistic dream, I guess I should say, because I don't think Carter has any chance. The one thing I'll say about Mason Graham is he's not a crazy great athlete. I think he's a good athlete and maybe even a great athlete, but not a special elite athlete, So he's the type of guy that NFL teams love to overthink. And someone will talk themselves into taking like a Mykel Williams from Georgia over this guy, and it'll be a huge mistake. It's Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, like all over. He's someone will overthink him because he runs a 5.1 second 40 or something like that, and he'll fall to 9 because of that, and the Bears would have to sprint to the podium if that happens. Or he could go 3rd overall and it's a moot point. But he has a chance at least to be there for the Bears.
That would be nice. I would love to pair him with Gervon Dexter.
Yeah, that's sick.
There's one last D lineman I want to touch on, and then we can go through just 2 other prospects, kind of wild card positions. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. What is your take on him? I've heard that he is kind of a wild card in terms of he might go way earlier than not expected, because right now he's probably like end of round 1, round 2 type guy.
Yeah, I like Walter Nolan. He's another guy who I've seen, but I have not done like a deep dive on yet. But he's on my list. But Ole Miss has everyone on their defensive line is good, so I've been watching them, and he's always flashing. So I've watched plenty of them. But the thing about Walter Nolan is he was the number 1 overall recruit a few years ago, whenever his high school recruiting class was. So the number 1 overall recruit in the country. He went to Texas A&M, and it was all just athletic flashes. Like any play he made was just because he was a crazy athlete. But the flashes were few and far between. Like he was making these flash plays, but then he would disappear from time to time for the rest of the game. Transfers to Ole Miss, and it's been a completely different player. The technique is much, much, much better. He still has that athleticism, that twitchy athleticism to rush the passer, but he's just so much better against the run, anchoring against double teams and using his hands and keeping guys off him, using his length to keep it off him, heavy hands. I think he is going to go. I think there's a possibility he's the second defensive tackle off the board after Mason Graham.
Okay.
Him and like Derek Harmon from Oregon and Kenneth Walker from the other Michigan D tackle, those kind of guys. I think it's possible that he does that because he's going to go and blow up the combine, and he's going to and people are going to start catching up on his tape because, like I said, there's such a big difference between this year's tape and last year's tape that the guy, if you just watched him in summer scouting, and then you're wondering why he's getting first round talk right now, then you're going to go back to the Ole Miss tape this year and be like, okay, I get it. I understand. So he's definitely an interesting prospect. Like I said, I have to do a real deep dive on him, but that's kind of just my 2 cents for right now.
Okay. Now I have 2 wild card ones. One we can stay on for a little bit, or you can take more time on, and we'll finish with him. But Malachi Starks, I've seen a lot of people talk about him like he's that special type of safety, like that you can take round 1. What gives him round 1 potential?
He's a fun prospect. I watched him mostly because I was watching Javon Bullard last year, who the Packers ended up drafting. He's one of my guys, and I hate the Packers got him. But I was watching Javon Bullard, and Starks was just constantly. It was impossible not to see Starks as you were watching other guys because he was just flying around the field. He's just always in the right spot. He's always around the ball. Like even when you think he might be out of position, he makes a play and gets back into position. Really good instincts, really good athleticism. Just kind of he's willing to hit. He's willing to come down to the box. He can play single high. He can play two high. He can play man coverage too. Really fluid hips in man coverage. So it's hard to find a weakness in this game. Like I don't even know. I'm trying to rack my brain of like what I would say as a weakness, and I'm sure there are some, but I really can't think of one right now. Like he just seems like a very, very solid prospect, kind of like Brian Branch went a lot later, and I think Malachi Starks is more athletic than Brian Branch, but kind of along those same lines where he just does everything really, really well. I think in terms of the Bears, I think the Bears do have a kind of a sneaky need at safety because Kevin Byard's older.
Yes.
We don't know what I mean, I hope Jaquan Brisker recovers.
Yeah.
But he can't stay healthy, and head injuries that have taken this long to recover, that's scary stuff. So I think safety is a sneaky need for the Bears. And if you want Starks, you got to take him round 1. I think he will be there when they pick. I think if Bears did pick a safety, even though he's a really good one, and it will probably be a 15-year vet for the Bears, people go absolutely insane if we pick a safety in round 1. But I think it would be a good pick in just terms of value and in terms of the prospect that he is.
Probably the most divisive pick if it were to happen. I think you know who I'm alluding to. I would hate it so much, but I would love it. At the same time, Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, like we were talking a little bit before, and he might be the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I as a runner for sure. I think as a runner, probably since Saquon Barkley. I mean, maybe you could throw Bijan Robinson into there, but I think Jeanty might even be better. I mean, the contact balance you see here, the guy just doesn't go down on first contact. He's constantly breaking tackles, constantly making people move. He has the top end speed too. You know, he's not the biggest guy. He's only like 5'9", 215. So he's got good, but not great size. But the way he just bounces off tackles, like even from defensive linemen or linebackers, like it's not just that he's shaking corners and safeties and bouncing off them. Like he's bouncing off defensive linemen, linebackers. He's doing it all. My concern with him, as a runner, like I said, fantastic, special player who can transform an offense. The way he struggles as pass blocking is noticeably below average. Like he can't pass block, which it seems nitpicky, but teams care about that. If you can't play on third down, then it doesn't really matter how much you do in the run game. And he's also not a really great receiver, although I think that might have more to do with Boise State's offense more than his skill as a receiver. But man, he is definitely a special runner of the football. And he can transform an offense. I think he'd help Caleb tremendously.
Yeah.
It would just make everything so much easier. That being said, man, it'd be tough to pass up an offensive lineman. Yeah. I forget why I heard this analogy or whatever you want to call it, but I think it worked. It fits so perfectly. Running backs are accelerants. If you have a fire lit already, and fire being lit is the offensive line, then that adding a running back to that can make it explode. If you buy a bottle of a canister of gasoline and keep it in your garage, then it's not going to do anything. And that's kind of where the Bears are at right now. We don't have the offensive line to get him to the second level consistently. Would the Bears running game be better right now if you put Ashton Jeanty on the Bears right now? Yeah, the running game would be much
We'd
better.
Have a guy who could break tackles.
Yeah, we wouldn't have DeAndre Swift going down because a cornerback got one hand on him.
Growing up watching the Bears, it's like, oh, we've always been known for running backs. And to have a guy who goes down first contact repeatedly is like the most frustrating thing to watch.
Yeah. So it's tough. I wouldn't hate it. I would not be mad because you still get a blue chip prospect.
Yeah.
But it'd just be hard to. They better attack free agency with the offensive line and then to use both of your second round picks on offensive line, and then maybe it'll be okay. But man, he is special. You can't deny that.
Well, Hunter knows my rant on Jeanty, like you're saying, Steve, and I was even thinking about Bijan too. I think I would say, in my life where I've really cared about actually like the scouting process, though, because again, before that, I'm sure you could add other guys, but for me, I would say it was probably right? Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley. And look, if we're talking about as a whole combination, just as a halfback, I would agree Saquon's probably number one. But as a pure runner, honestly, Ashton Jeanty, I've never seen anything like him. He never goes down at first contact. And on top of that, he has a really good combination of moves he uses. He's very smart. Like, he'll set up and then he'll just hit a gap that you didn't think he was going to hit. Like, he's a really sound runner. But I do think, look, and Hunter knows I was going on my rant the other day. The Bears are just so not in position to spend this pick on Ashton Jeanty. And honestly, I think we can use the course of history here at this point. It really does not matter even if your team has a more built O-line like the Falcons with Bijan Robinson, right? I think you can look back and say, yeah, they probably could use that pick better, right? I mean, I think no matter what, getting running back in the first round generally, the Lions are the one exception, I guess, right now in recent memory. But the Lions are the Lions, right? Like the Lions have like everything filled out, and they've hit free agency perfectly. So it's like spending your first round pick on a running back just from a team building perspective, I'm really never going to be a big fan of. It seems like you always end up seeing them succeed with another team more, or they end up injured within the first couple of years, and you're like, wow, that was a good play.
People love to point out Saquon Barkley. Excuse me. Look what Saquon Barkley did with the Eagles. I'm like, you should definitely try. It's like, okay, but you shouldn't be looking at what he's doing with the Eagles. You should be looking at what he did with the Giants.
Look what Swift did.
It's a miracle he's back after all the injuries that he had at the hand of the Giants. Right. Honestly, I mean, his body is different. The fact that he's able to still do it with all the injuries.
I mean, Saquon Barkley was still good on the Giants. Don't get me wrong, but he was averaging 4.1 yards a carry, which is very, pretty average. And then he goes to a team with a really good offensive line and is averaging 6 yards a carry. And it's like, okay, he is that talented, but he was also that talented on the Giants and wasn't as successful because of the offensive line. So, it's tough. But, I mean, as a prospect, as a runner, on par with any of those other running backs we're talking about.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, for hopping on. We appreciate it. We got to definitely have you on again as we get closer. Yeah. Maybe do a mock or something. That would be real fun.
Hell yeah. Seriously, we appreciate you.
Anytime, guys.
Awesome.
Anytime, guys. I love talking draft. Seriously, literally, anytime.
All right. Thank you. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Go.
All right. Thanks
for
having me, guys.
Dog. All right. I'll see you.
Bye.
Well, Dobbs, what do you think now? Like, where are you sitting after the prospect talk? Like, where are you sitting and where the Bears should go at 9 currently?
Okay. So again, if we're just right now with how things are going to go, again, I think if we're talking best case scenario, right? I'm with Steve. I think Abdul Carter or Mason Graham is probably best case scenario. I think the way the cards are going to fall as of right now, but again, this is also subject to change. We know how the combine can affect guys. You make them shoot up or shoot down. And we've been a part of that ourselves. Sometimes, we see the combine, we go, wait a minute, no. And then he ends up being just still a
it happened last year with Bucky Irving.
Oh, that's a great example.
Bucky, what are we doing?
Oh, if we pulled up the tape of us, if we pulled up the live stream of us last year, oh man, we got to put a clown nose on after that one.
Yeah. That was tough.
But hey, hand up, we're honest guys. But that's kind of the point is look, and that's why, again, you try to, you strive to make the mistake less and less. Tape never lies more than anything else, right? And you do have to compare it to competition level. With all that said, I think that the best case scenario pick for what they're going to have available as of today, it's probably going to be Will Campbell. That would be who I would say is going to be such, no matter what, an incredibly high floor, super high pedigree. Leader is always what I'm looking for too. I'm looking for guys that they were respected in the locker room, right? That's one transition you have to make is, okay, do we have to transition him from, is he kind of childish? Because, again, it's not like it's a common thing, but coming out of college, you're not all the time getting guys that are going to come in super ready for the pro grind. You're very confident that's what you're going to get with Campbell. But look, there's other guys too. And I know Steve City wasn't the biggest fan. I do think though, look, me, I've said it before. But as a guard, let me be real clear. As a guard, I don't think Kelvin Banks is a tackle in the NFL. I do see I can see the upside of him as guard, though. He's a real good combo blocker. But like Steve said, though, I'm not sold on spending such a high pick on him. If that was the case, it'd be like a trade back scenario. And the Bears have done too much of that. I think you got to just lock in on a guy you're very confident with that has an incredibly high floor. And we talk about our floors all the time. Like, yeah, ceiling is important, but the Bears are not really in a situation right now where you can be shooting for ceiling only. Like, you got to be looking at a really high floor. And if they have a super high ceiling on top of it, it's just a plus. Like, you got to build a starting O-line group.
I think I'm leading Abdul Carter. I think I'm leading Mason Graham 1, Abdul Carter 2, and then Will Campbell 3. Because I do think you can find O-line talent with your 2 second-round picks. Whereas if you're able to get, like, blue chip, like right under blue chip talent with Abdul Carter and Mason Graham. I think you have to take them if they're available. I think the Bears will probably be picking like 6 to 9 in this draft. And I think you have to do that. While it would be great to have Will Campbell, you are going to more likely find starting caliber, high end offensive linemen, especially interior guys at the beginning of the second round, than you are going to find quality defensive linemen at that stage. Not saying you can't find them, not at all. There's a lot. I've heard this, and I should ask Steve when he was on here, but I've heard that a lot of the time, or at least in this draft, the talent is more stretched out. It may be like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
No, I would agree with
there's
that.
more
Just
people stretched
initially.
out instead of it being like last year where the talent kind of, I felt like, dropped off a little bit.
No, absolutely. I think again, this is especially just we were talking even Emory Jones like an example. Like there are guys that you have a lot of confidence in their upside, and you get them in the right building with the right coach, and all of a sudden, it's an explosion, and you're like, how did they fall this far? I think there's a lot more of those guys right this year than last year, and yeah, it is. I would say it's much more spread out. But I'm with you. Look, as far as what the Bears need most, because again, whether it's O line or D line, it still is trenches. You got to start somewhere. The Bears have got to build more respectable trenches on either side. Yep. Mason Graham would be amazing. Abdul Carter would be amazing. But and look, to your point, like we just talked about on our last show, but we'll bring it up again for anyone that wasn't there last time. Like, look, last 4 games of the year: Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, Packers. That's
not winning another game.
Oh, I mean, if we're talking percentages, there's an above a 50% chance that they don't. I'm not saying it'd be like 55, about a 55% chance that the Bears don't win another game this year, which in this scenario is totally fine. It's not the end of the world. This year, right, with the type of top end, right, trenches talent that you could be getting, because it's not a quarterback year, which is fine, right? That it's the best year for that to be the case. So, and like you guys said, there will be teams that will reach. There will be QBs taken earlier than they should. So that leaves the Bears in a spot to kind of come in and clean up with the guy that they think is going to be the perfect guy to fill one of these trench roles.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I definitely had fun talking with Steve just to get a better idea. Like, I watch some of these prospects, but obviously, like, I've just started really watching like college prospects in terms of like trying to project them to the NFL. So talking with someone who's done it for quite a while was pretty cool. And it's a good better idea of what the Bears should be expecting walking into this. So subscribe to the Bear Cave if you haven't. Follow us on Twitter on all platforms at DBC. No, that's wrong. At the Bear Cave 1920. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be live a couple times every week. Have a great rest of your night.
More draft content to come.